Yo. We back with another one, man. It's your boy Ralph Sneaks, man. Back to another episode of Damn YouTube Sports Talk Show. Uh Ralph Sneaks checking in with you, man. Make sure y'all head over to YouTube, subscribe to the content, hit that notification bell so you can get notified when I drop new content. Head over to IG. You can follow the sports page, damn underscore YouTube underscore sports talk. If you want to follow me personally at Ralph underscore Sneaks, or if you want to head over to X, damn YouTube Sports Talk. That's where you can follow me at over there. Um, you can follow me on those social media platforms, man. But we're gonna get to it, man. Week one, college football. I understand it was week ones. There was a lot of rinky-dink games. There was a lot of top ranked schools paying other schools to come in and play and just beat the hell out of them. 51-3, 49-0, 63-10, type game. It's a lot of that week one, but it was also some pretty solid matchups in week one too. That were also lopsided, and we're gonna get into that. But first, let me just say this: college football, man, it's in a different space. It's in a different era. It ain't what it was 10 years ago. Hell, it ain't what it was 5 years ago. You now got to adapt. Just like businesses, I'm going to use this, equate that to business. Businesses now ain't the same that they were pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. You had to adapt to the pandemic. You had to adapt to what business is about to be after the pandemic. And if you didn't, you just left behind, and you're probably gonna be out of business. Because things that were going on in business pre-pandemic has evolved and changed to something totally different post-pandemic. I say all that to say this, to tie all this together. You now got to use the transfer portal if you are in college football. You're now going to have to use the NIL in college football. And I said this on a previous episode. The portal and NIL now is like free agency in college football, or in college sports rather, because it ain't just football, it's basketball. That's essentially like free agency in college sports. This right here, portal, is very important to coaches, because what it's about to do now is not buying you no more time if you're a coach. This is speeding up the process if you're a coach. And if you don't quickly get with the program, you either gonna do one or two things. Your ass either gonna get fired and replaced by somebody who is with the program, or your ass is gonna get tired and retire because you can't get with the program. And you can go somewhere else and you still ain't gonna be with the program. So your best bet is to retire. That's only one or two things gonna happen if you don't get with what's going on in college football. Now let's tie this into Dabo Swinney, who Clemson played Georgia to open the season up down in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz. And they just got the hell beat out of them. It was 34-3. Dabo Swinney doesn't like the portal, didn't utilize the portal, and you're at a major school, Clemson. You're in the South. A recruiting class ain't just going to cut it no more. See, I'm going to equate this again, and I said this on a previous episode. I don't know if you checked it out, but if you haven't, go over to YouTube and subscribe and check out the previous content. But I said this on a previous video, on a previous episode, that recruiting classes is now equivalent to the draft at the next level. The portal is now equivalent to free agency at the next level. You no longer can go into your recruiting class and rely solely upon that. You can rely on that to some degree, but that degree ain't as big as it once was, because now with this portal, these kids are jumping in this portal, transferring to schools, That's essentially like free agency in college. And your recruiting class is now like the draft. You drafting for what you need with the potential of losing it because you're going to lose it in the portal. And then you're going to have to go in the portal and replace what you lost if you still want to stay relevant or if you still want to stay in contention. So Georgia 34-3 over Clemson in the season opener. Like I said, that game was played in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta. Georgia was without two of their running backs, Robinson and Etienne. If you look at Dabo, didn't do nothing in the portal. Don't believe in the portal. But then you got a guy like Kirby Smart, who, by the way, Georgia came into the season ranked number 1. They still had a top recruiting class, and they still went in the portal and got players. They got Etienne out of the portal from Florida. They got a receiver, Kobe Young, I believe that's his name. He came from Miami. They got this kid Humphreys out of Vanderbilt. They also got a tight end that transferred in from Stanford. They got those guys out of the portal, and they're the number 1 ranked team in the country, and they had a top recruiting class, right? So if Kirby coming into the season with a number 1 recruiting class, and you got to also factor in the guys that he has returning that didn't go to the league. He had a ton of guys that's returning that didn't go to the league. Now, Georgia did lose some guys in the transfer portal as well, just like everybody else did. But they replaced what they lost in the draft and in the portal with going into what they lost transferring out in the portal and what they lost going to, they went to the NFL draft. They replaced that not just by recruiting, because they do a damn good job recruiting anyway. They always have a top ranked recruiting class. They went and replaced what they lost to the draft in the portal by going in the portal and getting what they lost. Now, if you're the number 1 ranked team and you can do that, why the hell wouldn't Clemson, who I think was ranked 14th coming into this season or coming to this game, why the hell wouldn't Dabo do that? If the number 1 ranked team feels like they need to do that, why the hell wouldn't the 14th ranked team feel like they need to do that? So if one or two things gonna come out of this situation if you Dabo Swinney not utilizing the portal, your ass either gonna get fired or you gonna get fed up with it and you gonna retire. Those are the only two options I see coming from Dabo. Only thing that happened to Dabo Swinney by not utilizing the portal. Because you can't come out here, and I get you did play Georgia. But the previous years you played Georgia, the game was much closer than this. Although Georgia beat you, but the games were closer. You got all kinds of hell beat out of you Saturday. Now, the game was close in the first half, but in the third quarter, when adjustment was made by Georgia, and they just put up both of their ass cheeks on the gas and took off. Right? So if you Dabo and you had a program like Clemson, how long do you think a program like Clemson is going to keep not going in the portal, seeing other teams, not only in the ACC, but just around the country, get into the portal and get better than them? Clemson ain't even talked about like they once was. The only reason we talking about Clemson now is because the lack of use that Dabo Swinney is doing with the portal. Georgia Tech, which is in the same conference as Clemson, is being talked about more in a positive way than Clemson. And Clemson has been by far, for the longest period of time, better than Georgia Tech. But all of a sudden, we now talking about Georgia Tech in a good way, and we talking about Clemson and Dabo Swinney in a bad way now because of his lack of use of the portal. Now you go to, like I said, you got all kinds of hell beat out of you by Georgia this week. Kirby Smart, outcoached you, and it didn't help that you didn't have anything from the portal. And then, like I said, Travis Etienne didn't play and Robinson didn't play. So one of the guys that you got out of the portal didn't play, or two of your running backs you got didn't play. And now Georgia keep a stable of running backs. So let's not just sit up here and act like those two backs were going to be the all-in be-all for Georgia and that was going to determine the game. No, Georgia keeps a stable of backs. They still ran the ball when they needed to without those two guys. Now, Etienne wasn't hurt. He was just dealing with a suspension. Kirby came down with a suspension, suspended for the first game. He wasn't injured. So ETN will be back Saturday. And they got one of those rinky-dink type games coming up this Saturday. So let's not act like ETN was hurt and he's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. No, Kirby just suspended him for the first game for violation of team rules. The other running back was dealing with injury, but it's not a significant injury that's going to keep him out for a significant period of time. You know, it's something minor. He might miss maybe like 2 games or something like that, but I don't think it's nothing that's going to keep him out half the season. So you're going to get those 2 guys back if you're Georgia. Combined with Carson Beck returning, combining with damn near 90% of the offensive line returning, combined with what you got out of the transfer portal to cover what you lost, combined with 90% of your defense is coming back, because on the defensive side of the ball, the only people I think they lost was Kamar Lesnar to the Houston Texans, and then they lost Javon Bullock to the Green Bay Packers. Then offensively, I think they lost 1 offensive lineman, if I'm not mistaken, to Cincinnati. And I think they lost Ladd McConkey to the Chargers. And I think that's pretty much it. You know, they lost the 2 running backs from last year. But they already had, like I said, ETN came out of the portal and they already had a guy ready to go. So they, with the 2 backs they lost, they replaced 1 in the portal and 1 was returning. So if you're sitting there and you Clemson and you looking at this, if the number 1 team got enough sense to know that they need to get in that portal to remain relevant, to remain number 1. And by the way, Georgia is the favorite to get to the national championship game. Like, I ain't just saying that based off of what they did to Clemson. I'm saying that based off what they had coming into the season before they played Clemson. And they just came out here and just did what they had to do, and that pretty much confirms, you know, and I get Georgia got a tougher schedule this upcoming season than what they had last year, because they got to go to Bama, to Texas, and I think they go to Ole Miss. So those 3 games they go to. But Auburn is at home. Georgia Tech is at home. I think Mississippi State is at home. And somebody else they got coming in. But those are the 3. Those are the 3 toughest games they have. And I see Georgia maybe losing one of those games. You know, they, like I said, they go at Ole Miss. No particular, I don't know the order, but I know they're at Ole Miss, at Auburn, at Texas. I mean, at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. Those are 3 biggest games they have this season. And I think they're going to win 2 of those 3 games on the road. You know, I could see them losing one of those games, but not all 3 or not 2, maybe one of those games. But like I said, Georgia is a favorite to get to the national championship game. And they pretty much solidified how dominant they were coming into the season, doing what they did to Clemson. Now, even though Clemson didn't utilize the portal, but you know, if you Dabo Swinney, you gotta look at this thing like, how much more long I'm gonna be able to survive? Because if I'm Clemson, if I'm a program like Clemson that has had success in recent history, I'm not going from having success in recent history to sticking with a guy who don't believe in the portal, and that's where college football is at now. That's not where college football is headed. That's where college football is at right now. So if you Clemson, how much more longer are you going to stick with a guy who don't believe in where college football is at now? You know, you got to get with the program. You got to get with the times if you want to remain relevant. Now, you're looking at Clemson, like I said, in the ACC, and we're not even talking about Clemson being a relevant team in the ACC. We talking about Clemson now in a negative way because of the lack of use of the transfer portal by Dabo Swinney. We are now talking more about Georgia Tech than we are talking about Clemson, if you know, in a positive way. You know, Georgia Tech, like I said, coming off of last week's upset win in Ireland over Florida State. You know, they played Georgia State this weekend, in which they won. So Georgia Tech is sitting at 2-0 right now, and you know, Clemson having their first and only games played so far. And I get that it was against a number 1 ranked team, Georgia. And I think that if Dabo had to use the portal, I think Georgia probably still would have won the game, but the game would have been closer than what it is. Because if you look at Georgia, they physical, they fast, they disciplined. I'm talking about on both sides of the ball. And I think if you look at Georgia, the only knock against Georgia would be the offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo. But I mean, how much of a knock can you say that is When last year they had an undefeated season, the only loss they suffered was in the SEC championship game against Bama, in which they were left out of the 4 teams for the college football playoff. Which some say they were snubbed, which I see why, because I don't understand how the hell you only lose one game, and the game you lost was in the SEC championship game to Bama, and you get left out. It's not like you lost two games, one in the regular season, and then you lost again in the SEC championship game. Your first and only loss of the season last year was in the SEC championship game. But that's another conversation to be had at another time. But like I said, if you Clemson, how much longer you gonna sit there and deal with the stubbornness of a Dabo Swinney and his lack of use of the portal? Now you can not like a lot of things, but if that's where it's a lot of shit I don't like now after COVID. But if that's the direction the shit is headed in, or if that's the direction that is already headed in, and that's where we at now, then I got to get with the program if I want to stay afloat. And that's what Dabo's gonna have to do. Or either Dabo's gonna do one or two things, like I said. His ass Clemson gonna get tired of that shit. They gonna fire his ass and bring somebody else in that's with the program or with the business of getting into the portal, getting players to keep Clemson up at the top in contention for more especially when they got an expanded the playoffs to 12 teams. They gonna either fire his ass and bring somebody in that's with the program or getting in the business of getting in the portal to keep this team in contention with now the 12-team playoffs, or Dabo can't handle it, his ass gonna retire like Nick Saban. He's gonna retire. And even if he does get fired, knowing that he doesn't like the portal, it's like which team now is gonna want to hire Dabo Swinney, knowing that this is what college football is at, and he ain't with that. You kind of will be hiring somebody that won't be beneficial for you. Now, if you're talking about something that the portal is illegal, they ain't doing this, that, and third, that's different. You then will have to just rely on guys returning and your recruiting class. But that ain't what college football is at now. And I think that's gonna kill Clemson. That's gonna be the Achilles heel for Clemson. They ain't gonna be able to survive without this transfer portal. They're gonna have to use this transfer portal because, like I said, Georgia Tech is now getting more talk than Clemson is, in a better light, in a better way than what Clemson is. Now I'm not sure what Georgia Tech did in the portal. But I know that you can tell last year, Georgia Tech, they've lost guys in the portal. Now, I'm not sure how many guys or what type of guys they got to come to Georgia Tech from the portal, but I know they've lost guys in recent history to the portal. But when you get Georgia Tech getting more talk than you, and you've always, as far as I can remember, has been a better team overall than Georgia Tech, for the exception of a few years, but mainly it's been Clemson that's been a better team than Georgia Tech. Now your ass ain't even get no talk unless it's about you lack of use in the portal. Georgia Tech is getting talk now. Florida State, having down year. They didn't use the portal. Florida State, they lost to Georgia Tech. They got not Louisville, they got Boston College tonight. So let's see what their season turnaround to be, because you look at Miami in the ACC. Miami look like they gonna just run through the ACC. Cam Ward, what they did down in Florida. Cam Ward looked like he wasn't even trying out there. He was just jogging, I don't even call it scrambling, because he did, use his legs to pick up some first downs. But it ain't like he was out there, going 100%. He out there just jogging through the defense, just casually getting the first down, just walking out of bounds. He get close to the sideline, he ain't in no urgency to get out of bounds, and Florida ain't in no urgency to hit him. He just casually walks out of bounds after getting the first down. He half-ass jogging through the defense to pick up the first down, get to the side, just walk out of bounds. Florida down there, they look like, and they was at home. This shit is embarrassing. Bill Napier, I don't know how long he gonna be in Gainesville. They down there in the swamp just getting all kinds of hell beat out of them. Miami coming in, just beat all kinds of hell out of them. Just throwing the ball all over the place, jogging through the defense for first downs, casually stepping out of bounds. It's so embarrassing down there in Florida, and I get this only the first game of the season, week 1. But what Miami went in there and did, I mean, it was so embarrassing that the Florida after the game, Miami players were looking at the Florida recruits and telling them don't go to Florida. Miami's the best team in Florida. Come to Miami. They were telling this to the Florida recruits who were at the game. They walking off the field after beating the hell out of Florida, telling the recruits that are at the game, sitting in the back of the end zone behind the edges, telling them on their way out that Miami is the best team in Florida. Don't go to Florida. Your best bet is to come to Miami. That's what these players was telling these Florida recruits who were at the game. And you can't sit there and blame these recruits if they change their mind on where they want to go based off of what they see from the field, from the head coach. I mean, that shit was just all out kind of embarrassing what's going on down there. And again, Cam Ward, who came out of the transfer portal, is a prime example why you now need to get in the portal. Because if you remember, Cam Ward had to go to the NFL, and then he withdrew his name. And he ended up in Miami. Now, Mario Cristobal, the head coach of Miami, like I said, they look like they just going to go through the ACC. I understand it's the first game. Anything could happen. Injuries could happen. You know, it's still a lot of football left. It's just only one game. You still got to, you still got a whole long season to go. This is week one. But based off this performance that they just put together in the swamp down there with Cam Ward, this looked like a team that's going to go through the ACC, especially when you got Clemson, who didn't utilize the portal to get better. You look at Florida State, who did get the DJU out of the portal, but they lost so much, and DJU didn't show you nothing. Didn't show nothing against Georgia Tech to make you think that he's a game-changing quarterback that could put the team on his back and win a game if need be. He didn't show you that over in Ireland against Georgia Tech. So now you got Florida State looking like they're gonna have a tough year. Clemson didn't utilize the portal; they're gonna have a tough year. Then you look at teams like Virginia Tech, who just lost to Vanderbilt. Then you look at the other teams in the ACC that, I mean, we really ain't really seen a whole lot of them yet. You know, Duke lost their quarterback. He transferred over there to Notre Dame. We don't know. I mean, who was picking Boston College to do anything in the ACC this year? You look at Wake Forest. You look at North Carolina. And if I'm not mistaken, North Carolina lost their quarterback. I think he broke his leg. I think he out for the season. And I think they barely beat Minnesota to open their season. But who picked Wake Forest? Who picked Duke? Louisville, I don't know. I haven't seen Louisville play, so I don't know. You know, who's picking these other teams? NC State, maybe. That's a dark horse team in the ACC. Maybe NC State. But when if you Clemson and you start talking about NC State and you start talking about Georgia Tech and you start talking about these other schools, now getting more talk in the ACC than Clemson is, that's a problem for Clemson. That's a problem. I can already see where this is heading. That's going to be a problem. And if Clemson don't want to be one of them bottom feeder teams in that conference, they're going to have to do one or two things. They're going to have to get Dabo Swinney to get on board with the portal and get this talent in through the portal that they need to keep this program up and running in one of the top tier teams in this conference of the ACC. Or either they're going to fire his ass, or either and bring somebody in here that's willing to do that to keep this team up in the top tier teams in the ACC, or Dabo Swinney is just going to retire. Like I said, I'm the only options you got because that's what college football is at right now. I mean, it ain't no going back. This is where it's at. And we talking about all other teams in the ACC other than Clemson. I mean, I didn't think that I was going to see the day where we talking more about Georgia Tech football and the expectations or the good expectations upon this season after the upset win over Florida State. Then we talking about Georgia. Then we talking about Clemson, who got all kinds of hell beat out of them in Atlanta this weekend. Now, Atlanta was live in Atlanta this weekend. You had Georgia Tech there, who's the talk of the ACC now, outside of Miami and, a couple other teams. but they ain't Clemson. And then you had Clemson in Mercedes-Benz playing Georgia, like I said, who just beat the hell out of them, who a lot of people got in the national championship conversation or being at the national championship game, who look like they probably gonna get a bye in this 12-team playoff. So that's where it's at if you Dabo Swinney. You either gonna get with the program or where college football is at, not where it's headed, because this is where it's already at now. You gotta get with the program, and you gotta get with the program ASAP. Or it's gonna be a lot more games your ass gonna lose this season. Because I didn't see much from the quarterback. I didn't see the dynamic playmaking ability on the outside from the wide receiver positions. I didn't see the defense that we've been recently known Clemson to have. Now I get it. You lost, defensive linemen. You lost Nate Wiggins to the NFL. You lost some D linemen to the NFL. You lost Jeremiah Trotter, linebacker, to the NFL. You lost Will Shipley, the running back, to the NFL. You lost pieces. I get that. But that's what the portal is for. To replace the pieces that you lost. That's what college free agency is. It's now the portal. That's college free agency. That's what you do. You go in and get what you need out of the portal that you lost in the portal going somewhere else, or you lost to the NFL. You go in the portal and get what you need to replace what you lost. That's NFL. That's college football free agency now, the portal. The draft is, the recruiting class is just the draft. That's what it is. That's equivalent to the draft, and the portal is equivalent to free agency. That's what it is. Dabo, you ain't in free agency, get nothing. You're relying strictly on draft picks who probably won't even be there throughout the duration of their time because of how the portal is set up, that they going to jump in the portal, end up going somewhere else. So if you go the route that you're going now, you're going to end up losing far more than you in the portal than you getting out the portal. So you're going to have other teams that are now going to jump over you in this conference, such as a Georgia Tech. They're going to jump over you. Miami has jumped over you with Cam Ward, the transfer of Cam Ward. Now, how long these teams stay out, that all depends on you. If you don't get in the portal, there are going to be more teams to jump over you. If you get in the portal, you can kind of stop the bleeding, so to speak. But if not, then this shit you're going to bleed out. And they're going to get rid of you, or you're going to retire because you can't keep up with the wave of what college football is at now. Not where it's going, but where it's at now. That's what you got to think about if you Clemson and Dabo Swinney. How long can you deal with Dabo being stubborn and not getting in the portal because he don't like it? It's a lot of shit I don't like that's going on, but I got to get with it because that's what it's at now. I got to make adjustments and get with it. That's where it's at now. And that's what Dabo going to have to do if Clemson want to stay one of those top tier teams in the ACC. If not, then they're going to fall below the Georgia Techs. They're going to get below the Miamis. They're going to be below the NC States. Wake Forest, you're going to be below these teams. So that's what you got to think about if you Clemson with Dabo Swinney. Because this right here, that ain't going to cut it. And like I said, I get Georgia number one team coming to the week one of the season. I get all that. And, they got a top recruiting class. They jumped in the portal. They had a lot of guys returning. I get that. But that game should have been closer if you were Clemson, because Clemson is low. You shouldn't have a hard time recruiting or getting to the portal if you're Clemson. You shouldn't have a hard time getting into the portal and getting stuff out the portal if you Dabo Swinney, you Clemson. But yeah, that's what Clemson is at right now. Clemson right now, yeah, you get more talk about the ACC out of Georgia Tech than you getting from Clemson. I mean, that's just the reality of where it is now. Then you had a game last night. Brian Kelly, LSU, losing to Lincoln Riley and USC. That game was out there in Las Vegas. If you Brian Kelly, it's your third year there. First year there, I think you went to the SEC championship game and then you lost to Georgia. And I get you did lose Jay McDaniels, but I don't think the quarterback situation is going to be the issue for LSU, in my opinion. I think that quarterback is good enough for LSU to win games. I think the bigger issue for LSU is on the defensive side of the ball. Because if you LSU, you got playmakers on the offensive side. And I think you got a capable enough quarterback to win you some games. But the issue with LSU and Brian Kelly is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. When you look at LSU play, especially last night, they don't seem to have that dominant defense. They don't seem to have that aggressive defense. They don't seem to have that smash mouth hit you in the mouth type of defense. Now you got Harold Perkins over there, linebacker. He's I think he's like 6'1", 225, 230, something like that. He's gonna be a first round pick, in my opinion, if he don't get injured or nothing like that. That's your only bright spot that I seen on defense last night. Harold Perkins. I'm projecting him to be a first rounder. Hopefully nothing happens to drop his stock, but I'm predicting him to be a first round pick, and it's up in the 2025 NFL draft. So outside of him, I don't really see that dominance on the defensive side of the ball. Like I said, you lost Jay McDaniels, but he was a quarterback. He didn't play on the defensive side of the ball. You lost Malik Neighbors. You lost Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas. You lost him. So those weren't defensive guys. And based off the quarterback play I seen last night, that's not going to be as big of an issue as you think it would be in LSU. I think it's going to be Brian Kelly's head coaching and combined with the defense. Because he got out coached last night by Lincoln Riley. And if you are Brian Kelly, you haven't won a season opener since you've been there. This is what, third year there? And you ain't won a season opener yet. You lost back-to-back years to Florida State in the season opener, and then you just lost last night's season opener to Lincoln Riley and USC. Now, those were two solid teams that you lost to, but, 3 straight years starting 0-1 if you are LSU with Brian Kelly as your head coach. That's not going to kill your season because, like I said, the playoffs has expanded from 4 teams to 12 teams. But based off your schedule in the SEC, if you don't have anything, defensively out there, it's going to be a long season. Now, this guy that's playing quarterback, he's not Jay McDaniels. I'm not saying this dude is right there with Jay McDaniels, but I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue at the quarterback position as I thought it was going to be. I think this guy's capable of winning some games if this team has steps up to the plate defensively. And if they don't step up to the plate defensively and they go through the season playing like they did last night, even though it wasn't a blowout, it was 27-20. It was one possession game, 27-20. But I think it was just certain times that LSU defense didn't look like LSU defense. Last year that was the issue. But you had Jay McDaniels who put up that like 50 touchdowns, that let your defense, that covered up your defense, let them off the hook, But that was the issue last year as well. It just wasn't talked about as much because Jay McDaniels and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas on the offensive side of the ball, they was just so dominant that covered up the defense. But now when you take a step back offensively because of what you lost in those 3 key guys, Jay McDaniels to the Washington Commanders, then you had Brian Thomas to the Jacksonville Jags, and then Malik Neighbors to the New York Giants. When you lose those 3 guys in the first, and all 3 of those guys were first round picks, that's how good they were. All 3 of them was first round. When you lose that, and you're now going to have to rely more on the defense to help the offense because you lost so much on the offensive side of the ball, and that covered up some of your lack of defensive issues last year. And you can't have that rolling over into this year, considering what you lost on the offensive side of the ball. Now, I thought coming into this game, LSU was going to win the game, even though it was at a neutral site out in Vegas, because I thought that LSU was going to be better defensively this season than they were last season. But coming into this game, they just didn't jump off the screen defensively. USC was able to run the ball, so let's not act like LSU hasn't been known for defense. LSU was an SEC team. They have put some studs out in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball, particularly in the secondary, and I just didn't see, defensive dominance on that side of the ball, from LSU like we've seen in previous years. Now I don't know what that is. Is that due to Brian Kelly's not emphasizing defense because of what he should, Brian Kelly was former coach of Notre Dame, so he should have some type of emphasis on the defense side of the ball, especially knowing that's what, LSU has had some defensive studs come out of there defensively, so I'm not sure what the hell is going on, but back-to-back years of lack of defense You know, and I understand, like I said, it's just week one. They can get better on the defensive side of the ball. It's just the first game. But for them to have the type of season that they need to have with a Brian Kelly as your head coach, then I think that's what they need to do. They need to prioritize getting that defense back to being fast, physical, and smash mouth. That's what they need to prioritize doing. They can't go through this season having teams run the ball all over them and throw the ball all over them and depend on this offense to do this year what Jay McDaniels and the crew did last year, because those guys are not Brian Thomas. They're not Malik Naples. They're not Jay McDaniels. Those are not those guys this year. Now, I think those guys are capable enough of putting enough points up to win games, but that's all going to depend on how the defense hold up. You can't put up 27 points and then your defense give up 34. You're not going to win games like that. You know, you're just going to, you know, your offense is going to put up enough points to win the game, but your defense is not going to play well enough to win the game. That's what I'm saying. So if you LSU, you can't have your defense can't be going to this season looking like they did last season. Like you can't have back-to-back seasons of what your defense did. That was a winnable game last night, and they lost it. And Brian Kelly, post game, was talking about, you know, we sit here talking about the same thing again this year. But if you're Brian Kelly, you gotta look in the mirror at yourself. Now I get it. The first year you went 10-4 the first year, and you went 10. You know, last year 10-3. I get all that. You know, and you went to the SEC championship game your first year, so that was a step in the right direction. But like I said, you lost Jay McDaniels. You lost a lot on the offensive side of the ball. So when you lose that much offensively, you got to count on your defense to pick up, because your offense is not going to be quite what it was. But if you are what you should be defensively, your offense is good enough to score enough points to win games, because the defense is going to step up as the offense has to catch up to what it was based off what they lost. So, you know, like I said, it's not going to kill LSU season, because you're now going from a 14 playoff to a 12-team playoff. So, you know, but if you LSU, you know, you got to do better defensively, especially being in the SEC, looking at your schedule. You got to do better. And as far as Lincoln Riley and USC, that was a big win for them. They don't look bad either. You know, that I can't forget the kid's name, but he had the arguably the catch of the year already. And we just in week one, the one-handed catch between both defenders, draped all over him. I can't remember the kid's name, but it's all over social media if you ain't seen it. But that's arguably the catch of the year. And like I said, we still in week one, and we got, you know, a whole season left to go. But you got to feel good if you Lincoln Riley getting that kind of victory. You was able to run the ball on LSU. Your quarterback play was good, because both LSU and USC lost their quarterbacks, back-to-back picks. You know what I mean? You had Caleb Williams go one, and then number one overall, and then Jake McDaniels to the Commanders. So you lost. Those two quarterbacks are not what they lost, but they're still good enough and capable of winning games. So if you Lincoln Riley, you got to feel good about your quarterback situation. Life after Caleb Williams, you got to feel good about that. Beating the Brian Kelly LSU team, like I said, he outcoached them. So, you know, you got to feel good about that kind of win going forward into the season. And this game, like I said, was at a neutral site. It wasn't at the Coliseum, and it wasn't down in LSU. It wasn't down in Baton Rouge. So this was a winnable game for LSU, but they didn't win. USC and Lincoln Riley did. So they got to feel good about that to open the season up with that kind of win. And like I said, it was, you know, third straight year that LSU has dropped the season opener. The first two, they lost to Florida State, and then last night USC. So they you know, Lincoln Riley and USC, they got to feel good going into the season with life after Caleb Williams and the crew. You know, I think Jerry Rice's son was over there. They lost him to the draft too. But yeah, moving on, we got, you know, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Saturday night, hell of a game. Notre Dame ended up winning it 23-13. They were down in College Station. Marcus Freeman, head coach in 2021, has done a good job. He's a young guy, not old, young guy. Mike Elko, the former coach of Duke. This was a chess match game, because the former quarterback that Mike Elko had at Duke is now the current quarterback who transferred to Notre Dame, and Mike Elko, who was the coach of Duke, is now coaching at Texas A&M. So you had the quarterback and the head coach who were together last season and now playing against each other at the season opener. I think Notre Dame, for some reason, Notre Dame seems to get they start seasons off strong, and then they kind of hit this little wall kind of midway through the season. Then they try to bounce back towards the end of the season, so to speak. But Notre Dame should definitely get in this year. I think Notre Dame came into this game seventh ranked team in the nation. But it was a good game. You know what I mean? Texas A&M going into a different direction. New head coach. They got off of Jimbo Fisher. I think they underachieved with Jimbo Fisher. So they're hoping that this dude, Mike Elko, is not the same as a Jimbo Fisher, that he can get these guys to where they need to be. SEC, down in Texas, NIL, portal, recruiting, that Texas A&M should be much better than what they have been in the past few years under Jimbo Fisher. You're looking at Notre Dame. They like I said, everybody's getting in the portal. That's part of college football now. Everybody's getting in the portal. Everybody's getting players. And I think Texas A&M made the right move getting Mike Elko. You're looking at what he was able. And I'm not saying Duke was some powerhouse over in the ACC. They definitely wasn't. But Duke had started to become better. Duke was similar to what Georgia Tech. They were starting to become better with Leonard Riley as the QB. But like I say, he's not there. Mike Elko's not there. The Echoes at Texas A&M and Riley Leonard is at Notre Dame. I think that's a good move for Notre Dame, especially when you got a young head coach like Marcus Freeman, who was already with the program, who's familiar with how things work at Notre Dame. But I think the real knock with Notre Dame is just the standard to get in Notre Dame. You know what I'm saying? I think Notre Dame could get better players. I think it's just the standard so goddamn high to get in Notre Dame that a lot of players are choosing to go elsewhere. And I'm not saying these guys are not smart. I ain't calling them dumb or nothing. But if my standard got to be this high to get into Notre Dame, and my standard can be not quite as high to get in somewhere else, why the hell would I choose to go somewhere else where my standard ain't got to be as high? I mean, that's just, basic shit. You know what I mean? That's but it is what it is. Academic standards at Notre Dame has always been high, and they always will be high. They're not going to lower it for football. And I think the Notre Dame football program is still a historical program, considering the fact that it was a historical school, considering the fact that how high the academic standards is to attend Notre Dame. But Notre Dame, like I said, I think Notre Dame should be a pretty solid team this year. Texas A&M, first year under Mike Elko, they head in a new direction. They, I'm not going to say this year, but I think next year they will be in a much better. They're going to take a much better step, to be relevant in the SEC, because now you have Bama with a new head coach. You got Florida down. And I'm not even gonna mention the South Carolinas and stuff like that, because Beamer, he might be on the hot, which is hard to say why a coach will be on the hot seat of South Carolina. They not really have any expectations. So how the hell could you be on the hot seat when there's no expectation for the team? That'll just be something that they do. It's not something that they expected to do. It just be something that they just do. But North Dakota State, Colorado, Thursday night game. Now, I will say this is Colorado won the game 31-26. But I think they still had the same issues so far this season. And I get week one, first game. They still had the same issues this season that they had last season. And how the hell is Travis Hunter not in the Heisman Trophy conversation? This man is playing both sides of the ball. This man is playing every snap of the game except for maybe one or two. He's been elite on both sides of the ball. I think he had 2 or 3 touchdown receptions. Yeah, I think he had 2 touchdown receptions in that game. Now it might have been 3. He might have had 3 touchdown receptions in the guy can't remember. It might have been 3. But how the hell is he not in the Heisman Trophy conversation? He's playing elite level football on both sides. Defensively, he's shutting his man down. offensively, he seems to be the go-to guy for Shedeur Sanders. They got that connection. So how the hell is he not mentioned in the Heisman Trophy, combo? But Colorado seemed to be having the same defensive issues that they had last year. And Colorado State on the last Hail Mary attempt, I mean, he caught the Hail Mary just short of the end zone. So if he had any more arm strength than what he had, and that thing landed in the end zone or at the goal line, they would have lost the game. There would have been no need to kick an extra point. That would have made it 32-31. So there would have been no need to kick an extra point. You know what I mean? So, if you Colorado, you got to fix that. I mean, you came out of there with a win, but you got to fix that. You got to be a little bit better defensively. Now, I get that, Colorado is in the Pac-12. I mean, in the Big 12 now. So, Big 12 teams are not historically known for defense. I think when you look at the Big 12, if you had to pick a team, which they ain't even in the Big 12 no more, you look at Oklahoma and Texas, you don't really look at Oklahoma as a defensive team. Maybe Texas was probably the better defensive team. Overall, on both, if you count both sides of the ball, Texas was. You don't look at it, but those teams are not there no more. Those teams are over in the SEC. So if you Colorado, you got to pick and choose what you're gonna be good at. Because now once just say Shedeur Sanders leave, like what is going to be your identity? Right now, you have an offense that can get the ball down the field. You have a quarterback that can distribute the ball. You got a playmaking Travis Hunter that plays both sides of the ball. That's elite on both sides of the ball. So you got to go ahead and figure out what's going to be your identity. Because you just can't look at this season and say, no, you got to care. You got to figure out what's going to be your identity now. Now, I'm not saying Colorado, they'll be a damn fool. They ain't going to do that. They ain't going to get rid of Deion. This is the most relevant Colorado's ever been since I've been alive, and I'm 37. So, this is the most money I've seen Colorado. This is the most talked about I've heard about Colorado. So, all they selling out the spring game. And it's snowing like hell out there in Colorado, and it's a sold-out spring game. A spring game in Colorado is sold out in the snow. It's 30 degrees outside, probably colder than that. And, wind blowing, snowing, and it's a sellout spring game. So this is the most relevant that I've known Colorado to be. So I think if you Colorado, you got to figure out a way to be a little bit better defensively. Because even though you won the game, that was a little bit too close. And at one point, North Dakota State was up. So that's a little bit too close if you Colorado. There's some things you got to fix. There's some secondary issues you got to fix. You got to fix your up front, your D-line. You just got to fix your overall defense. You got to play a little bit better defensively if you Colorado. You can't have the issues of back-to-back issues, issues in back-to-back years, the same issue in back-to-back years. You can't have it if you Colorado. But like I said, you won the game, and if the quarterback had a little bit more arm strength in the ball, had to reach the goal line or the end zone, and game would have been over because he did catch the Hail Mary. You know what I mean? And there would have been absolutely no need to go out there and kick an extra point because that would have put him up by one. It would have been 32-31. So if you Colorado, you got to clean that up. You got Warren Sapp over there now up front. But then again, you got to look at it. You in the Big 12. A lot of those Big 12 teams over there, they're just offensive teams. You don't look at the Big 12 for a whole lot of defense. So that just probably where Colorado falls. Now they would like to fix the defense. But will they or can they? I don't know. Because, let's just say, well, when you lose Travis Hunter, you're going to lose a lot of defense, especially in the secondary, because he, like I said, on the offensive side of the ball, he's elite. And on the defensive side of the ball, he's elite. And it helps him on the defensive side of the ball to be elite because he plays at the wide receiver position. So he understands the route concepts. He understands the down and distance. He understands a lot of things playing DB from a wide receiver point of view and perspective because that's what he plays as well. So he can understand things the route. See, he can understand the concepts, the down and distance. He can understand that a lot better as a DB because he plays the wide receiver position at an elite level. So that helps him to, that also helps him. You know what I mean? But once you lose that, then where do you go? Defensively, and that's a bright spot defensively. Shallow is over there. So it's the pack. I mean, Big 12 football is like it's more so known for offense than defense. That's me. You don't look at Big 12 football and say, "Damn, that's damn good defense," or "Damn, they swarm." It's not like that. But this is Colorado's chance to kind of change it around. And have that. But it's got to start. It's got to start week 1 so you can carry that over to week 2, 3, 4 throughout the season, and move at the end of this season over the next season. Now you got a coaching standard that you're going by. But yeah, man, that was just some takeaways from college football week 1. We got Florida State and Boston College tonight. Like I said, Vanderbilt beat Virginia Tech. Just threw that in there. I don't know when. Virginia Tech, ACC, falling off or whatever. Vandy, I don't know when the last time they're not really known for winning games. But they beat Virginia Tech, who, was favored by a lot of people to win that game, but they didn't. But yeah, that was just some week 1 takeaways from college football. Like I said, we got action tonight on ESPN, I believe it is. Yeah, ESPN. You got Florida State and Boston College. Labor Day weekend, wrapping it up. Then you got the NFL starting this upcoming weekend, Friday night, I believe, with Green Bay and Philly. I think they're gonna be over in Brazil. So yeah, man, that was just a few takeaways from week 1 college football. There's a lot of other games, but a lot of other games that were being played were like power. Were bigger teams playing. The lower level teams. Those the payout games, I call them, where they pay teams to come play them at home. Bama, Western Kentucky, and I think South Carolina and Old Dominion, in which Old Dominion almost won the damn game. South Carolina had to come from behind to win that. And then you had a lot of other schools that were paying other schools to come in and play. Boise State and Georgia Southern. And I think Boise State running back ran crazy all over. I think he had like 6 touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns. He had over 230 some yards rushing. So he ran wild all over Georgia Southern. But there was a lot of those games week 1. It's gonna be a lot of more of them games week 2 as well. So we haven't really got all the way into like the meat and potatoes of the season as far as the competition and the good games. Even though week 1 had some good games or some games that we thought was gonna be good, but turned out to be lopsided games. Georgia Clemson, that turned out to be one-sided game. Notre Dame, Texas A&M was a good game. LSU, USC was a good game. Florida and Miami, like I said, that wasn't a good game. I didn't even think Florida was going to score 17 points. I thought that game was going to be like a 38-13 type game, which I was close. It was 41-17, but I didn't think Florida was going to manage to get 17 points because they in just disarray. They all discombobulated. They got all kind of hell going on down there in the swamp. But that's my time, man. I'm gonna get out of here. Happy Labor Day to everybody. Be safe. Make sure you go to YouTube, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get notified when new content drop. You can head over to IG and follow me at damn_YouTube_sports talk. Follow my personal page if you want. Ralph_Sneaks, or if you're on X, Twitter, it's Damn You2 Sports Talk over there. Click the links in the bio and you can subscribe that way too. Until the next one, man, y'all be safe and happy Labor Day.